Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to the channel of crises. Well, not exactly. Maybe the channel dedicated to talking about one subject and stretching it out all week long as we do our demi-daily deep dives, but crisis has a lot to do with what we're talking about because that is this week's subject. Thank you, Kitty. I appreciate your presence. Yes, I am your host, DBJ, and today is Third Pillar Thursday. Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday. Yes, and I always do this preamble because I don't want people to get confused. The third pillar of gaming. Hey, Kitty, say hello. The third pillar of gaming involves exploration, with the first and second pillars representing combat and social interactions in our tabletop RPG games. Now, as your self-appointed third pillarist in the tabletop RPG community, I'm here to tell you that exploration is much more than taking 10-foot poles and sticking it into unknown holes around your environment. It is much more, for me, representative of vast and great and dynamic environments happening in and around you. And as a matter of fact, the environment to me should be as much a character, even if temporarily, much like your favorite television and movies use exotic and strange locations, including them in your combat. And so, all right, we did that preamble. And yes, thank you very much there, Jera, Red Dice. By the way, guys, check out the Purple Worm podcast as well as tuning in to Red Dice Diaries, great YouTube channel, and a great dude. So today, Third Pillar Thursday. All right, so usually the context of Third Pillar Thursday has to do with whatever we're talking about this week, in which we are talking about a crisis. And a crisis is, for me, I guess, defining it is like it's the cusp of, it's the scummy donut on the outside of a post-apocalyptic world, and it is that which can temporarily or even permanently change your setting. A crisis can come from, of course, weather. It can come from political upheaval, economics. It can be from some man-made environmental or technological event. It can come from an outside source, such as aliens or uncovered artifacts, or any and all of the things all combined together. Criminal activity, whatever the hell it may be. Well, shaping it around the third pillar, shaping it around exploration, for me is about finding a location and then having that location have a physical, mechanical impact in your game, Dungeons and Dragons, or Fifth Edition, or any role playing game, GURPS, or Champions, the original Mayfair DC game. I don't know. I'm pulling things out of my ass. Traveler. Anyway, there is no limitation to using the environment in any tabletop role-playing game. It just has to do with our imagination. And so, much like taking one of the most boring encounters you can think of, how about, I don't know, bandits on a road or of travel or something, right? Taking that and placing it into a very unique environment, I think, for me, is the atrophied muscle of tabletop gaming that I am the individual to massage that muscle. Yes, I'm going to caress it and bring it back to life, one individual at a time. All right, so what does that have to do with a crisis, though? Well, with a natural environmental, like disaster or weather event or something like that, it's pretty easy, right? So The winter storms have come early and often, and they're just not letting up. And you've got blizzards, frigid cold, ice, snow. Pretty easy to think about that. The opposite would be true: heat waves and famine, and no rain. And so you've got, um, the sun just starts to rise, and it's brutal, and there's very few places to find fresh water sources, and food sources are drying up. The animals that feed on the plant life, they're gone, and maybe it's just very difficult to navigate in terms of finding shelter or nutrients or something. And the same thing goes with earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes, and all these things could be in the background of the crisis that's happening in the world. I brought up a role playing game where there is an indie game where it began raining, and the whole role playing game is about the fact that it just never stopped. It started raining and it just never stopped. So, volcanoes, mudslides, and the whole 9 yards. Forest fires for those of you participating that are very close to sit enormous forest fires, just like we have here in the states on our Golden Coast. Lots of forest fires are a thing that's a crisis, where people move. Myself here in Ohio, in the states, where we are in a valley, and we get lots of floodwaters that come through. That in and of itself is a crisis. I joked around about flocks of, for some reason, the wyverns were overbreeding, and there's flocks of them, and maybe that's the new crisis. And of course, it might affect the environment. So when it comes to affecting the environment, much like we have ranged combat, melee, taking the initiative, ranged combat, spells, slinging, in social interactions, we've got threats and intimidation, interrogation, persuasion, diplomacy, deceptions, performances, seduction, carousing, and all of these things. Well, for the environment, I have my own rules and rulings that go far beyond what Fifth Edition calls difficult terrain. The environment has, for me, there's static environments, escalating environments, random environments, stimulated environments, basically if-then conditions with the environment, and of course you have yourselves timed environments and subcategories thereof. And in a crisis, absolutely positively, you can use those to enhance what's going on. Now, along with the natural environments, we also have ourselves some man-made crisis as well. I know you guys already know about the fact that whenever you have a man-made crisis, you have man-made idiots, and those idiotic people, those people known as a single creature, sometimes we call them mobs, almost act as like a swarming, mindless creature itself, and so mobs of people are absolutely an environmental effect. Not just crazy carrying pitchforks, flipping cars, setting fires to buildings, raiding caches of food, or looting houses and things like that. They also go on the hunt for the most part, innocent people, but believe they're guilty, and they want to string them up for whatever perceived crimes are going on. We have a lot of that. Yeah, Dead Man says Storm King Mountain in Colorado had a forest fire in '94. Hey man, listen, um, there's there's a hell of a lot of forest fires, all in general, man. And I don't know the history of that one, but I'm guessing it's pretty bad, you know. And forest fires itself are a crisis, even if you are not directly affected by it. Fires cut off normal paths of travel. It's pretty dangerous if you try to travel into and around forest fired areas. You could be engulfed in said fires. You could be cut off from safety. Of course, People's homes are destroyed, livelihood is destroyed, wild animals are killed, and many of them panic and migrate to other areas. And the migration of those animals, maybe people are dependent upon the migratory animals in the first place. And of course, putting out a forest fire is a daunting task. It is near uh, divinity level ability to really put out a forest fire. Um, yeah, the South Canyon fire uh, over at Storm King Mountain was a 1994 wildfire that took the lives of 14 um, wildland firefighters on Storm King Mountain near Glenwood Springs, Colorado, on June 6, 1994. Is often referred to as the Storm King Fire. It was the subject of John McClane's book Fire in the Mountain. Was that the one where the movie was made about them? Um, I was about to say Russell Crowe. Kurt Russell, maybe. But again, I mean, look what happened. How many disaster movies and television shows have we seen about earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes? Preferably the ones without sharks up in them. Um, typhoons, whatever have you, right? There are a lot of movies where people get stuck in places they didn't expect to be stuck in, especially planes and people lost in uh, mountains and high regions or wandering through a desert or something. But we also have a lot of man-made, accidental and or purposefully created crisis as well. For example, during during a war, you have innocent people running around, especially if you have player characters that are not in a war, but there's a conflict going on, and you have in a society where you have ordnance flying overhead, you have people running for cover as explosions are happening and going off around you. You have military vehicles moving in, military tracked vehicles moving in and around towns and things. You have military personnel corralling people from one direction into another. In a more of a medieval sense, you have siege engines and weapons and troops moving through one place or another, as well as people trying to survive. And so, a crisis can affect the environment. So, if we start to narrow this down, I'm not exactly sure why I'm not coming through Discord, but I will just the moment I will disconnect and reconnect into Discord if you don't mind. Let's see. Although it's showing me green, I'm not exactly sure why that is. All right. So again, in a crisis, we do have our environment, and like I said, the environment can be static or escalating or something of that nature. And so, for example, if we take a static environment in a crisis, a static environment is something that basically just it's an overlay. It is a thing that is happening because it is happening. So, for example, after an earthquake, maybe there's lots of buildings have fallen, trees have fallen over, vehicles are overturned. Normally erect buildings and structures have fallen, and of course a static environment would be something like your classic 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons difficult terrain. It is a thing that is there that affects you, and without a lot of time and energy you really can't resist it or get around it, except with extraordinary measures like flight or some ability to levitate or fly over or teleport around it or something. Other static events, of course, are darkness. I know 5th edition, everybody has dark vision, so you might want to ignore that a little bit. But there's also other static things, such as smoke and fog. When fog rolls into an area, it just is. It reduces vision. Dark vision is useless against it. If you want to bring back thermal vision, basically infravision, you could bring that back, maybe, possibly. And there are, of course, other things that are not affected by, say, fog or smoke, such as your ability to hear and smell, things like that. But As far as static environments, they aren't my favorite, but they're a baby step into using the introducing the third pillar into the game. And so a static environment, much like smoke and fog and mist and difficult terrain with debris hanging everywhere. I'm thinking of frigid cold and heat are other types of static environments. If you go outside, it's cold. There's not really much you can do to alleviate that on an environmental scale. Of course, you can get warm and stuff, but they're also what I love about the environment are the oft ignored but really cool ways players can interact with the environment to force the PCs to change their tactics to give them other difficulties without necessarily having it be hitting things about the head and shoulders. For example, in frigid cold, um, one thing that I always go back to is all those potions that you have in your bag. Do they freeze solid, and can you even drink a frozen potion? Right. Uh, what happens when you have frostbite in your fingers or near frostbite, and you have to warm up your fingers? What about somatic spells? Or using manual dexterity, thieves' tools in a modern to sci-fi setting? Maybe you have to you're controlling drones with a remote control in your hands, or you're a plugged-in wired hacker. Can you use your keyboard in frigid cold or something like that? Your feet going numb reduces your ability to sense the places that you can step. So your your dexterity or your speed and sense of steps will go away when your feet are numb. Unable to avoid slips, trips, and falls, maybe hidden pits if you're in a frozen tundra, to fall through maybe soft snow down into a pit or something of that nature, etc., etc. So there are other things. Same thing when it comes to smoke and fog and mist. Not only is dark vision useless inside of that because it doesn't allow you to see through particulates. Yes, I understand there is this pervasive thing about darkness is useless in Dungeons and Dragons because everybody can see through it, but that only matters if the only thing you're using is darkness. But high winds are another static effect. If you're in a place where hurricanes and tornado season is very common, and there are high winds. High winds can blow away physical ranged objects and things, making it very difficult. Or I don't know, capital D, disadvantageous to launch physical spells and or objects through the air. Maybe it's very difficult with a capital D disadvantageous to fly using any form of flight for fear of falling out of the sky or getting blown against a solid vertical object or something like that on your flying carpet or broom of flying, or your winged cloak, or you're a winged individual or a mage that's able to fly through the air. Might want to be careful if you're getting blown around in the woods or inside of a major city or something of that nature, as well as I'm a huge proponent of the environment affecting, being beneficial to the things adapted to the region. Like aquatic creatures don't drown. There are plenty of animals and creatures that use their own environment as their own lair, and as well as having it have an effect on the adversaries in your worlds that are unadapted to a region. So again, those goblinoid bandits on the road, yeah, they're affected by the fog or the smoke or the heat or the cold, high winds and all that other crap, just like everybody else. And maybe, just maybe, the environment. Again, I'm a proponent of this. The environment should be used and abused. It should be used against your PCs and abused by your PCs against your adversaries. Making some characters far more effective without necessarily doing more damage. Okay, but after we go with static, when we have a crisis on our hands, usually The point of a crisis is that a lot of them are either escalated, um, they tend to fall into escalation, timed, um, stimulated, or randomized events. So let me give you a couple of examples of, like, let's take volcanism, right? And volcanoes are exploding, and the PCs are maybe a distant island, or they live in a community where there are one or more volcanoes going off, and so um, timed events are things like a maybe a geyser, or um, torrential storms, um, you know, throwing white-capped waves across the deck of ships and slamming into a border town on a in a bay or something of that nature, and the white-capped waves are again 5 times as tall as the tallest man, and they're crashing down with this ice cold seawater onto the docks or something of that nature. And yep, Dead Man brings up Old Faithful. Yep, a geyser that goes off at a particular time. And while we may not understand why, we know that it happens. So a good example of a timed event are, maybe there's an open plain on an alien planet, and flames or poison gas or acid, or heck, even cryo geysers are a thing on some asteroidal or moons in our own solar system. And whatever the case may be, maybe as a timed event, certain things jet out of the ground, much like a trap that has a swinging pendulum, or statues that shoot gouts of flame or acid or goo or tar or adhesives or whatever the case might be. If it's timed out, the player characters could both avoid the harm and then effectively use it against their enemies if they know that the timed event is coming around. An example would be, let's take Indiana Jones punching the big guy standing underneath the flying wing, and the plane starts, the chalk under the wheel moves, and the plane starts moving as the propeller blades are going. That's a timed event, right? Hey, if I stand in one spot, at some point that spinning blade of spinning propeller of death will come and kill me if I don't move the hell out the way. But what happens? Indiana Jones is fighting the big guy whose punches and kicks are doing nothing against this person. So what does he do? Indiana Jones gets very effective by, I don't know, tricking the guy to stand there in the way of the blades while Indy falls to the ground and dodges out the way, right? So not only can that be a danger, for example, a timed event could happen every round, every other round, every 6 rounds or what have you, especially if you have, going back to the volcano is spewing out hot lava, and the geysers of poisonous gases or flammable gases or gouts of flame are coming out of the ground just as we speak. And maybe the PCs are like looking around and like, all right, I want to wait and see if I can time so I can jump across the crevice before more flames shoot up through the crevice in the ground. And you go, well, it's happening every other round. And like, all right, well, this round I'm not going to jump through because it's basically a huge ass wall of fire. But next round, the flames will decrease, and I'll try to jump across it then. And then, of course, you bring in your enemies that have something to do with that, and they're like, okay, what are you going to do, PC? You going to split your attention between the two, or what? I love putting harmful things in the hands of the players and making them decide on their own. So timed events are a really cool way to show, like, not only is it predictable, but you are foreshadowing what the harm is going to be before it happens. If the PCs are fighting, I'm going to mispronounce it, Sahogan, on the docks during a major storm with ice cold salt water sweeping across the docks or the deck of a ship or something, and they know every other round our ass might get swept off into the ocean because we're standing on the docks while the Sahogan are like completely, they could care less, right? what do the players do? Do they hold on to a rope? Do they try to duck down and hope they don't get swept off the deck of the ship? Um, hey, they're standing in front of people with tridents, enemies with tridents. How do they avoid that? Do they, maybe this round they could have done another kick-ass maneuver and killed another group of those shark people, but maybe that's not the smart thing to do when they know a big white-capped wave is about to smash into them, causing them harm and or sweeping them off the deck of a ship, right? So timed events are really cool to use because you know when the hammer is going to get slammed down. Now, escalating things in a crisis, you got to have some escalating events in a crisis, especially when it comes to the environment. Escalations, of course, are floodwaters that start to increase. They are escalation is exposure to radiation. Escalation comes when crowds of people start gathering and they start getting angrier and angrier, and they are panicked or they are fearful. Let's point to any major city overrun immediately by zombies, and the population starts going crazy and they start panicking, and the PCs are in the park playing with the kids and buying popsicles or something from a local vendor, and all of a sudden they hear crashing cars and people screaming across the park, and then little by little the crowds start to get worse and worse, and they start getting heavier, and the crowds start moving past the PCs, and now it's really difficult to move through the crowd, and now the crowd's like a wave of physical power that if you're not strong or agile enough or find a high location or object to stand on, you'll be overrun and knocked down and or trampled. Same thing happens in battle as well. We saw this in Game of Thrones, where we had the Battle of the Bastards, and what's his first name? You Know Nothing. I think his first name was You Know Nothing. His last name was Jon Snow, standing there on the battlefield, and he's there by himself, thinking he's going to enact his revenge. And what happens? The whole battle starts moving around him, and there's nothing but a big crowd. He gets trapped inside of it to the point where he nearly gets the air, pushed out of his lungs. He's pushed down to the bottom and trampled and all that kind of business, right? So an escalation. Oh yeah. Tesla brings in asteroid impact. Yeah. Can we say a combination timed escalating event? Like, yeah, this thing's about to happen, and if your ass don't move, it is a thing that will absolutely positively come after you. We've seen how many times have we seen that in pop culture, where there's a huge impact somewhere, an asteroid impact, planetoid falls into a planet, nuclear bomb goes off, and the PCs are very far. The PCs protagonists, I guess, the protagonists are very far away. We saw this in Rogue One when the test, the so-called minor test of the Death Star technology is launched at Jeddah, the city of Jeddah, and it blasts down on the ground. But mind you, you can do this with anything, right? Boom, big blast hits the ground, big impact. You look out over the horizon, and then there's this wave of flame and rock and pressure and sound and heat and damage, and radiation just starts moving towards you. Timed event, okay? Timed escalatory event. Although it might be more like, if you don't get your ass out of there, you're probably dead. But you get the point, right? Of course, there are when it comes to escalating events as well, like I said, rising flood waters, increasing heat or cold, increasing radiation, anything that in the beginning might be minor, but if one stays where they are or doing what they're doing, it gets worse and worse and worse. Zombie apocalypse is a perfect example. What are those, 2 zombies? Ping ping. I mean, we've seen this with creatures plenty of times in, say, video games. Oh, what is that, a portal dumping out a creature? Okay, what's 1 or 2 of them? Big deal. Ping ping, take care of them. What's that, 3 or 4 more come out of it? Okay, I shoot the 4 that come out. Oh, there's 1 still standing there strangling? Okay, he's getting closer. Oh, wait a minute. What, 3 more came out of the portal? Shoot. Okay, I hit the one closer to me and aim at the 3 that just came out the portal. Darn it, the 3 that came out the portal blocked block the 3 or 4 more that came out the portal. All right, now I might want to get out of here because I can't hit all of them all the time, and I'm starting to get surrounded. Zombies. There's 1. Now there's 5. Now there's 23. Now there's 87. Now there's so many. It becomes its own. The horde becomes its own massive 500 hit point plus creature that just starts sweeping over the land, right? And of course, you do this with, say, alien invasions or insectoids type invasions or the blob, the nameless blob, the swarms of insects, that kind of thing, just sweeps over a region and takes over. The same thing goes with the mindless drones, be it like Age of Ultron and all those robots, right? There's one, and then there's all of a sudden there's more and more and more, and if you stay right there, you may or may not survive. Now, escalating events also do, for the most part, doing nothing means you're probably going to die or suffer an effect so much so that your character probably will be dead, right? Stepping into quicksand is an example of this. Okay, I'm ankle deep in quicksand, but I don't want to move. But if I don't move, I'll sink further down. Okay, now I'm down to my knees. Come on, somebody, throw me a rope. All right, I'm down to my waist. See, seriously, anybody? Okay, if I stop moving, maybe I gotta move. There's somebody shooting arrows at me. Oh, now I'm down to my chest. What the hell's going on? The increase of harm and danger. Now, the last two, the stimulated event and the random event, of course, absolutely are really great tools to really bring across the idea that this crisis is something that not only can you not stop it, but you really don't know what's going to happen next. A random crisis is the kind of idea where, for example, random crises are used in chases. A random event can be used when you want to really institute chaos into your world. For example, let's take for some reason people are panicked in a major town. Let's make it a fantasy town or whatnot. It can be a modern day town. It could be a space habitat filled with 1.5 million residents, whatever the case might be. And the people are panicked. And so random events could be someone throwing a Molotov cocktail and the alcohol or other flammable explodes on the ground near you. It could be in wartime where arrows are launched through the air and you need to watch out for the arrows and spears being thrown or javelins or something, and you and your adversaries need to take cover because of something damaging flying through the air. It could be an errant grenade thrown, or some random individual pulls out their shotgun, stealing groceries, and fires randomly into the crowd. It could be an out-of-control vehicle or horse or wagon that rampages through the area, and you need to jump out the way or get knocked down and or trampled. Again, it could be a massive crowd that happens to be running from some other kind of horror or damage. Maybe an electrical line falls to the ground and everybody runs, or a propane tank explodes, or two people are fighting over some kind of magical wand and it cracks open and explodes right there. I don't know. Maybe 2 individuals pull out their guns or weapons or something and go to fire at each other, and everybody in the region starts making a run for it. This happens at sporting events all the time. One person yells fire in a crowded enclosed area like a movie theater, and everyone goes and starts trampling their way out of there, although nowadays most people try to pull up their phones and take a picture of it. But you get my point, where this could be another random event. Maybe during that the exploding of this new volcano, you don't know whether fire is going to fall at the sky, or poison gas is going to sweep over you, or thick choking ash, a cloud is going to sweep through your region, or the ground is going to shake and split open, or maybe the ground just shakes itself. You may not be able to stand up. The ground splits open. You've got to watch out before you fall into a crevice, and then that crevice might have debris fall down onto you. Maybe instead of fiery materials falling out the sky on top of you, maybe it's heavy material like rocks, or something in between, like some thick adhesive lava that not only burns you but may incinerate you, as well as it trapping you inside of the flaming goo or something of that nature. Hello there, True. Welcome over there on Twitch. This, by the way, you guys out there, if you are unaware, this show is simulcast on 3 social platforms. It is simulcast on Twitch, YouTube, and our Discord server, and you can listen in and or watch on at least 2 of those platforms. Not over on Discord, but many people feel the audio is quite it's pretty good over on Discord for some reason. So anyway, the random events also can really be a good thing. Of course, pick as many random events as you can. My suggestion is pick as many random events as you can for any die that you're going to roll -1, right? So, for example, if you only have a D8, pick 7 entries and put them on your randomized chart. Thank you, Dead Man. I appreciate that. Put those 7 items on your random chart. Why do I say your die -1? Because your number 8 with a D8, or your number 10 with a D10, or whatever, you should put down as roll twice on that list to really complicate things, right? So, remember that flock of wyverns still hanging around. I don't know why that flock of wyverns is there, but they are. And if there's if there are mobs of people that are packed so tightly that they could knock your character down, blocking the path of travel, and you could possibly make a strength check or save or something, or make a strength and or dexterity save to not get knocked down or get trampled. Not only do you need to worry about that, but maybe the flocks of wyverns are causing it, and then they too might take advantage of you, the fallen prey that's fallen to the ground, while the rest of the crowds are running the hell out of there, right? And you might get snatched up by your shoulders or your feet and dragged off to the now exploding volcano or something. I don't know, combining all that together, but you get my point, right? Same thing with a storm, like a tornado or hurricane or something like that. Hey, who knows? Maybe there's flying debris. Maybe one of the PCs gets hit in the back of the head by an errant cow flying through the air. Maybe there's something that might impale someone. So a random thing thrown around on random objects thrown around in a storm might have piercing damage or slashing damage or bludgeoning damage. Maybe some of that material might trap someone. Maybe that material just becomes difficult terrain in and around the PC by random chance. A bunch of debris falls down in front of you, and you're like, "Oh, I was gonna close in on my adversary, but now I gotta climb in or duck under this crap that just came in front of me." Again, not everything needs to be necessarily harmful, but can change the environment. So most of the things I'm talking about are like saves, skill checks, skill challenges, or whatever to get the hell out the way, avoid the thing. But maybe, just maybe, it's not that way. For example, in a major storm, debris gets dropped down. Maybe the debris is so much that anyone on either side of that debris is behind cover, like half cover, 3/4 cover, full cover. Now, maybe the PC in question is like, thank goodness that wagon was dumped down in front of me because I really needed to duck behind cover. Whereas maybe another PC is like, oh, okay, can I climb over the destroyed wagon? Can I run around the wagon maybe to go after my enemy? Because if I don't, my enemy is going to get away, right? Maybe there is something that the PCs can do to abuse the environment, right? Use it and abuse it. Okay, the land splits open because of a volcano. Now there's an open pit with lava down in the bottom of it. One PC is like, cool, Great. Okay, I'm gonna lead the lizard men that are going to attack me, and instead I'm gonna kick the one lizard man in the chest and knock him down into the lava filled pit. Okay, make a roll. Bam, you hit him. All right. My intention is not to do damage. My intention is to do a little, push shove maneuver and whatnot. And you guys know me. Everybody complains that pushing and shoving creatures in fifth edition is useless, and my contention is it sure is if there's no place to push and shove them into. That's where the environment comes into. Kicking and shoving somebody off of a rope bridge or a ledge or into the grinding gears of a factory or something like that, or gouts of flame. Let's go back to Old Faithful, shooting gouts of flame or poison gas or something like that. You kick somebody over it, time it right, boom, it shoots out an initiative 10 or whatever, and they're standing right over the gout of flame. Good for you, right? So the last type of environment that category is a stimulated environment or if-then environment, and that's where usually tension is really built up in this when you see this on television and movies, and a lot of video games do this as well, where the danger only happens if certain conditions are met, and by continuing to engage in those conditions, if the condition is met, then the damage and the danger happens. An example would be, I don't know, a rope bridge is a perfect classic trope on this one, right? So you got the rope bridge. You have to have that foreshadow where one of the wooden planks falls out of the rope bridge and falls down into the raging river, or sharp, spiky rocks down at the bottom of the gorge or what have you, and the rope bridge might be swaying in the wind, and of course, the contention is if you are not careful, then you'll probably fall through, right? If you've moved slow, then you probably have capital A advantage on any rolls to get across because you're moving at like half speed. Okay, makes sense. Then you want to say, well, I want to move a little faster. I'm going to move at my standard speed. All right, you're not benefiting from the aid system, right? The aid system, advantage, inspiration, disadvantage. So you're neither penalized nor gaining any advantage from it. But maybe, just maybe, a horde of undead or zombies or Sahogan or some other crap, right? The waves of lava are sweeping through because you're on the tribal island, and the waves of lava are just behind you. And if everyone doesn't get across the rope bridge is going to just catch on fire and snap, and you won't be able to get across the huge gorge. Okay, well, my character, after everyone gets across, I'm going to make a run for it. I'm going to run across the rope bridge. So maybe there's a capital D disadvantage to actively hold on, watch out where you're stepping, and make sure you don't get blown off the rope bridge because of the high winds, right? Yes, I'm speaking a mile a minute, but I'm trying to pack in as much of my knowledge as possible to see if it applies to anything that you guys want to add into your game. And so during a crisis, of course, people are a great thing to add into a stimulus, right? You get a crowd of people, they are crowded together in a shopping area, or they're listening to a public speaker, or they are watching huge televisions, or they're watching, a 3D image broadcast from over the intergalactinet or something. There are crowds of people maybe gathering together to get food items because they're going to be dropped off or deposited by, say, military personnel, or everyone is waiting in front of the gates to be led into the air quotes arc that will take them to safety or something. And then what the hell happens? Something happens, a gunshot, a blast of flame, aliens land, military craft start firing into the crowd. Something happens, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. And again, maybe the player characters decide to use this to their advantage. Pickpocketing people in the crowd can be a little bit easy, especially when people are pushed up against each other. Saying or doing things to manipulate the crowd is a possibility. Maybe blending into the crowd is a form of possibly deception or acting or disguise or stealth or something by blending into a crowd. Maybe being friendly or drawing the crowd's attention into one direction so they don't see things happening behind them while somebody else is pickpocketing them or something can be used. We've seen this plenty of times where people with guns are trying to hide their guns in a crowd, but somebody takes their gun and fires straight into the air, causing everybody to run away from them. Same thing can happen in a panicked herd of animals, right? A predator comes there and a big herd changes its direction. And so maybe the PCs want to use the crowd to trample their enemy. But of course, who's ever standing in the middle of the crowd is completely exposed. Or maybe someone wants to create chaos because that's the best way to escape a particular event because someone is being hunted, right? The same thing there. We've seen this happen where you have flash mobs. Someone goes into the crowd and they're being attacked by enemies. The PC grabs a black umbrella, puts it up in the sky, and what happens? 80 other black umbrellas go up at the same time, and whoever's drones and people, snipers in the high locations can't see them because they timed a flash mob event. Or the hero and or villain runs into a crowd after a sporting event lets out, and the hero and or villain takes a ball cap and puts the ball cap on their head, or steals a sweatshirt, and they blend right into the crowd, looking like everybody else with their team colors and painted faces and banners and things of that nature. So crowds are a great environment to use as well in a major crisis. Now, for more of the crises like leading into a post-apocalypse where zombies and radiation and war, a lot of times you can also add in random static traits with random descriptors and narrative things if you are a little nervous about adding in the environment into your whatever role-playing game you're using, especially say Dungeons and Dragons as a classic. Now, I do hear many of you out there thinking, I hear you, DBJ, but this sounds complicated. And my contention to you is, it's not complicated. It's just an atrophied muscle. It's like trying to blink only one eye, or roll your tongue, or crack a knuckle, or something. Maybe you just haven't done it in a while, or you haven't done it at all, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. Maybe for me, the environment is basically the simplest of stat blocks for your adversaries that you can have. Instead of 12 ogres, maybe make it 8 ogres during a thunderstorm, right? Instead of 16 bugbear, make it 12 bugbear, but on a muddy hill during a torrential rainstorm or something. How about reducing some of the adversaries, but put them in a really cool location, a dynamic location. Also, during a crisis, you may have a semi or actual chase. And what I mean by that, a semi, not the vehicle, but a pseudo chase would be something like a number of different dynamic surfaces that the PCs may be on. I'm looking at you there, Assassin's Creed, right? Rooftop chases are an excellent example of this, where each rooftop might be different. Maybe you have a flat rooftop, you have elevation changes, you have space changes, you have angles on rooftops, you may have rotted roofs on rooftops, you may have to balance you may have to have significant balance on a rooftop. You may have washed sheets and tapestries hung on clotheslines on rooftops. You may have smoke being belched out of a chimney on a rooftop, kind of thing, right? And so you have one location that you could run around in, but having various both mechanical and or narrative descriptors descriptors of things hanging around. Again, in a city that has gone crazy, you may have burning cars, flipped over wagons, wild horses, rampaging mobs. Sure, the PC might be a badass, but being confronted by 8 people with shotguns that are trying to steal people's food, or guards that are trying to keep peace, and they just look at the PCs as another group of miscreants in the city, while the PCs are really on their side. What do the PCs do when their MacGuffin is getting away, but the city guards there with their pikes trying to keep order? Do you just, I'm going to try to do a forward flip over top of the heads of the pikemen? Do I run around them? Do I try to convince them that I need to pass by? Do I just say screw it and I do something to barrel into them and get past them? Do I acrobatically grab onto a ledge and parkour my way, free run my way in the alley and run over top of them on the rooftops to go after the MacGuffin that's getting away outside the city or something, right? A great way to change where people are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and establish different types of difficulties for certain things. And guess what? It's a great way to make some of your player characters look like badasses. Now, I do also hear some of you thinking about, especially your game masters and dungeon masters out there, that some of your players might spam a lot of these advantageous things. Again, hey, if I can knock one lizard man into the crevice with the flowing lava, I can knock all of them in there. And my answer to that is, why are you using the exact same environment with the exact same traits over and over and over again, right? If it's windy, maybe it's only as powerful as a gust of wind spell in your repertoire, but in a few hours it'll turn up to, I don't know what's a higher level spell than gust of wind, right? Pick one, you guys. Maybe it gets so powerful that you're like, you know what? It's as powerful as an air elemental, but covers, I don't know, 87 square miles because the storm is that powerful, right? And yeah, but no, you can't hack at it with a sword. That's not going to work. But diving for cover or getting the cover but locking the door before your adversary gets to cover, right? Or maybe there's a skill or attribute challenge where you and your adversary are both trying to run for cover, and whoever gets there first gets to slam the door on the other guy, right? And so maybe there's a challenge of who gets the highest initiative. Remember, initiative is actually a stat challenge as well, as going for speed, or maybe both people have to make acrobatics or athletics checks or something like that, or 2 people are trying to pull on the same door to try to get it closed and shut closed to keep the danger out, or snatch the door open and get the danger in. Let's say giant insects are trying to go into the locked storm shelter or something, and it might be a strength versus strength check to keep the insects are trying to open the door. You're trying to slam the door shut. And my contention with the third pillar of exploration is all the things that we see that are badass, that we love, that rule of cool, and we want to use that in our games, and we see that in the movies. Let's use that in our games. A little bit at first. Sometimes your players may not understand that they can do it, so let your NPC start doing it first. And I guarantee some of your players are like, wait, what? You mean I can? Well, hell, I'm going to use my hammer and slam the orc in the head and see if he falls off the edge of the cliff. Like, okay, go for it, Hey, I'm the halfling. Can I stand behind the lizard man? So when the monk does a spinning kick and kicks the lizard man in the throat, that I help him trip the lizard man into the crevice with the lava at the bottom. Hell yeah, you can. Red Dice says, I love the idea of treating a mob as an environmental hazard. In fact, I wrote some street chase rules for Glenn Seal's Adventures in Great London book, where a crowded street gave a modifier to the chase roll. There was also a 1 in 12 chance of a person taking 1d6 damage each chase round from random blows, thrown bottles, etc. I absolutely love that. Hell yeah. I mean, random crowds, I think because of the way many games write rules, that we often think of crowds as a group of individual NPCs, and so we're reluctant to throw in a crowd of people because we think, well, if there's 87 people in the crowd, I need 87 NPCs, as opposed to thinking of them as part of the environment until a chunk of that environment gets a name, right? Like a crowd of people is an environmental hazard. Helping one elderly person that was knocked down by the crowd is an NPC, right? And our ability to shift between the two, I think, can be feel like it's daunting, but I if we exercise the atrophied muscle, it's not really that hard. A crowd absolutely acts as a barrier, and it acts as a great way to hide what you're doing, and it acts as a thing where, like you said, random blows, thrown bottles. Sure, a single PC can punch a commoner in the face. I wouldn't even bother making them roll. They can easily take out one commoner. But even the strongest man in the world can be taken down by a mob. And so maybe sadistic and a sadistic player character may attack a mob, reducing its effectiveness. For example, a very easy thing would be, say, in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, the mob is in front of you. They have a effective DC and strength and hit points of 20. If you do 7 hit points, it reduces the DC and the crowd's ability to do what it's doing by 7. So now it's a 13 DC, 13 strength, or whatever, right? Like, you could very easily do that. I would default to that. And again, are those rules in the game? No. But are you using the engine of the game? Yeah, you can very easily use the engine of the game, right? Red Dice goes on to say, entirely agree that treating a mob as a single entity is a great way to do it, since such things take on a life of their own. In fact, the term London mob became common in the 18th century because rioting was so common in the capital city. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, when, like I said, even in our own society, we all know one person is an individual. A mob sometimes takes on a life of its own, right? We've seen mobs take on a life of their own because there's always one person in the crowd that wants to take it one step further than everybody else. And then there's always someone else that's like, they're not going to one-up me. Yeah. And then they start, again, flipping over police cars, taking, 18th century, taking torches and pitchforks and rioting and destroying things, throwing bottles, attacking random people because they just happen to look somehow different. That person's got red hair and freckles. Let's attack them. That person's wearing fine clothing. Attack them. Hey, they're Dragonborn. Attack them. Despite the fact of what may or may not happen. And again, like you said, maybe the mob start turning when dangerous weapons are thrown, or someone uses some arcane ability, or some other dangerous event happens. Maybe, someone on a suicide pact jumps out of a window and slams into the ground around everyone, and everyone's like taken aback and scared, and they panic or something. Or a dangerous creature or construct or something storms through the town, and the mob starts shifting and moving and getting in the way of the PCs, right? Red Dice Diaries goes on to say, maybe, to use D&D terms, you could have a few people as the instigators, and if they get killed or knocked out, the mob takes a morale check or disperses. I'm with that. I'm very much with that, especially if a PC, maybe like a PC, does an investigation check, right? It's not just like a perception check, but it's like, or insight might be very good as well. I'm going to look for the person, the instigator. Okay, you see them in the crowd. Great. I'm going to take my sling and pop them in the head with a rock, right? Or my character's charismatic. I'm going to say a thing that's going to get the mob to flow to the east because we want to go to the west and get them to go in another way. Deadman says Exalted does basically that. Yep. Now there are some games that do have some rules for this, but If you can't find it, pick an engine that does it. Our swarm rules good for this to use a mob as this function? Sure. And as a matter of fact, guys, I do have a video. We did a week of nothing but humans, and in humans we talk about mobs and how the mob as an environmental effect, as like combination creature, a combination of obstacle and a hazard and a trap, all that together is a thing. Five zombies, they're just five individuals. Hundreds of zombies, that's like a creature of its own design, right? It becomes its own 500 hit point swarming land-massed monster that does a thing that's doing a thing, right? Now, you guys know me as your self-appointed third pillarist, that for me the environment is a lair, and it is a hazard, and it is a trap, and it is an obstacle. It is all of those things put together as one, and yet neither of them as well, right? It is all the things placed together as one thing, so that like I always bring up, people aren't just scared of alligators. They're scared of alligators pulling them down into dark swampy waters, right? Oh, Jay says, like Alpha and the Horde in The Walking Dead. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Who's that? I'm trying to UT Cowersfer. All right, 61 sir. 61 sir. Says, "What's up? How are you? I found your Twitch channel." Oh, okay. Well, streams like Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday, Crisis are amazing. I'm about to do it animated. Animated. Be right back. Intro and offline screen for your stream. Oh, what? Take your time. By the way, this just as a reminder. I broadcast live Monday through Friday on Twitch, YouTube, and our Discord server. So it is a simulcast show. So for all of you out there, all of you Twitch affiliates, I would very much love to be an affiliate. So if you could follow the channel, if this is of any interest to you or anyone else out there, or you're home and you're bored, and I'm not going to say what I said yesterday, or maybe I will. Then yeah, please. Okay. I very well will do that. 61, sir. Oh, absolutely. And by the way, after the show ends for about an hour, I do spend a little bit of time in the Discord channel, the RPG with DBJ Discord channel. We're hanging down in the boiler room, by the way, if you go over to the Discord channel. So yes. Red Dice is a great way to capture that zombie horde vibe, where you can shoot 5 or 6 zombies, but the rest just keep rolling forwards. Yeah, and of course, what is it, 4th edition? Well, there's other games that do this as well, but it was 4th edition that had the minion rules. There's other games that you do minion rules as well, right? So, like you said, if you have a zombie horde, and each of them has 10 hit points, and the player character, I'm going to fire my arrows into the horde. You can say, you know what? How much damage do you do? I did 60 points of damage because my character is just that much of a badass. Okay, you take out 6 zombies, right? I mean, again, not only are we here to make things difficult for our players, to make things dynamic, we shouldn't get in the way of our players being badasses. And if using the minion rules is that way, used that way, yeah. Red Dice Diary says, yeah, 4th edition, one of my favorite mechanics from that game. Hell yeah, give the mob each 1 hit point and let them wreck shop, right? One of the few mechanics that very easily mimics the rule of cool in most, if not every single role-playing game out there, right? Now, of course, again, Session 0 or Now, session zero doesn't need to happen before the game starts. A session zero can be done 5 sessions in by going, all right, guys, I want to use this minions rule. I need you to understand the difference between minions and the regular creatures that I have, so that you understand that on one hand you might be able to take out like 4 or 5, 6 minions, like a John Wick badass. But on the other hand, when you are attacked by the named foes, that you might not be that effective against it. And if your player character is like, yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Go for it, right? So anyway, guys, I want to thank any and every and all of you out there for participating. We go live Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. my time, Eastern Standard Time. Whatever time you are engaging in this, it is 1 hour prior to that, based on your time, your time zone. Now, I will say that for those out there, tomorrow is Future Friday, and Future Friday is reserved for transhumanist tabletop RPG gaming. But normally, Monday through Friday, Monster Monday, Monster Monday, Discord Tuesday, World Building Wednesday, and Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday, we take one subject. This week we were talking about a crisis, and we take that and we deep dive into it. We extrapolate it out and figure out how to use it for our tabletop games. So guys, thank you very much. Thank you so much for participating in this show. I really appreciate it. By the way, guys, check out the Purple Worm podcast and Red Dice Diaries on YouTube. Go over to reddicediaries.com. I think you'll have a lot of fun there. Anyway, thank you for making me look brilliant. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.